So in the last class we have seen the static method and variables, and we have discussed about the line class, and in the line class we introduce the concept of the length. That means if we have 2 points, start and the end points for the line, then if I want to calculate the length, I should use the formula under root x2 minus x1 into whole square into y2 minus y1 whole square. So this is the formula that we have introduced, right? And the reason why I have moved it to the util class separately is and made this method as a static class is because this method is a pretty much a utility method. We call a method a utility method when this method could be reused in different cases, right, throughout the application. For example, this method we are going to call for calculating the length of a line. Similarly, when we have got a rectangle object which extends shape, for example, then to calculate the diagonal of the rectangle, for example, we again need the same calculation. Yeah. So if provided we would have introduced this method as a part of the line class, then I would have needed to duplicate the same method in the rectangle class. For example, in the triangle class, if I need to find the perpendicular and the base is there, but perpendicular, for calculating the perpendicular, again I have to use the same method. So just for the sake of separating this whole logic out, I have taken it out from the particular class and created a separate method in a util class. Now making it static is also necessary because this particular method is a full-fledged independent method, right? It takes something like the start and the end points and it returns a value which is the length of the line. So it doesn't depends in any way in any of the state variable of the util class. So normally when you see a method is declared static, they will not operate on any of the state variables. Why? Because static methods are called even before the initialization or creation of the objects, right? Okay. One more advantage that we have seen is for the static method is that we can just directly use the name of the class to call the static method. In the similar lines, if you see this math class, I have shown you how to attach the source code, you know it very well. So just go to the math class and you will see almost all the methods that you see in the math class, they all are static method. See, for calculating the cosine, sine, and so on, then to radians, to convert to radian, to degrees, then logarithm, all the methods. Similarly, you have got the square root method which we have just used in our function. Then ceil function, right? All these functions are static by nature, right? Why? Because they take something as a parameter and return something as an output. They don't depend on any of the state variable. However, they depend upon some of the variable which are not state variable, but rather they are the static variables. For example, you see the value of exponential, that is going to remain constant, right? The value of pi, that is going to remain constant. So when they are not going to change, and so one thing is that they are declared final, that means they are not going to change. We will see final in today's class as well. Okay. And they are also declared static so that we can use along with the name of the class. So these variables, whether when I talk about the static variables of the method, they come into picture even before the creation of the object of the classes. So we can call a static variable or a static method only from a static method. Okay, right? Rather, I said the reverse thing. I said I can call the static variables in method from the static method, right? In fact, that is the opposite thing. Even from the non-static method, I can call the static methods in the variable. Okay. But from the static methods and the variable, I cannot call non-static methods and variable. Okay, na? Correct? If you see in any of the exams, for example, that happens for the recruitment, all that, sometimes what they do is they make a method call of a non-static method from static method. For example, from the main method, they call some method of the same class without creating the object. So in that case, you will have to create the object and then only you can call the method. That's the reason actually. Okay. Now let's move to some of the leftover topics in your syllabus. Final, we'll come to final. Just hold on a second. Just some simple thing first. So command line arguments that we have not discussed, and it's pretty simple. Okay. So instead of going with the ID, let me go directly to the I think I made a folder for that's okay. See this program, class my first program, public static void main string args, okay, and then I am printing something, right? Okay, just let me make certain changes here. Instead of printing these message, let me say for I want to use advanced for loop for string s colon then args ठीक है. So what this program is trying to do is basically in the main method you have got a parameter, and that parameter is an array of the type string. The name of the variable of that array is args. Okay? So args is nothing but a collection of different string objects, right? You can say collection in the sense not the collection APIs of the Java I'm talking about, but rather a collection of different elements, right? Now what I'm doing is I am trying to iterate over this array args, and because each element of this args is of the type string, so what will this advanced for loop will do is it will iterate over args till it reaches the end of args, and while iterating over each and every element, it will pick the element and will assign it to s, which is a string. Then I am printing this s, right? Now because I've changed the code, let me delete this class file. Let me go to the command prompt, copy cmd Java C. What should I write? I will press tab, it will take automatically .java. No message, that means it has been compiled. I will say Java, then should I put the dot class or dot Java or something? No, just the name of the, this is the name of the class actually. Now what happened? Okay, yeah, tell me what happened. It has not given me any output. I think everything is right in the program, right? Okay, tell me from where the values are being printed. From the array, right? ARGS. Now that ARGS is the part of the main method. It must receive some array or a number of elements that could be put into the array so that it could be functional, right? I have not passed any arguments. So what I must say is, say Imran space say Alam, say XYZ and so on. Okay. So this way you can create a lot of say command prompt based command line based commands. For example, copying. If you know the file operation, you can give a directory and you can copy a file from one location to another. For example, you can do the read and write operation, editing operation, all those things. You can create a lot of commands using this way, right? Now, for example, if I want to manipulate this particular program to add as many integers that I pass at the time of the execution of the program right from the command line. Okay, got the idea? What I want to do, I want to use the same program. I want to change the program so that instead of passing a string, I will pass 5, 7, 9, 11, something, any number of integer variables, and I want to get the sum printed. So how should I proceed? Let me say sum is equal to sum integer sum is equal to 0 initially. Now I'm the same way as it applies to the string parameter that I am passing or argument that I am passing. Instead of string argument, I will pass integer values, right? I will say Java my first program, then space 5 space 7 space 9 and so on, any number, right? So what the changes that I should make in the program? Okay, tell me one thing, whether I pass integer, float or whatever type of data, right, it will be received as a string because this array is of a type string, right? So that means when I iterate over this loop, I will get the data in the form of a string in the variable s. Now I need to convert that variable from a string to integer before I can do any computation, right? Parse, right? So what should I write? Tell me. Integer dot parse int s, right? And let me say int x is equal to this. Now I will say sum is equal to sum plus x, right? And then I will say total is equal to plus sum, right? Okay. Okay, let's try this. Okay. Do I need to compile the code again or not? Because I made changes, right? So fine. Let me say Java, my first program. Again, I have not passed any variable. So what I must say 3, 5, 7, 2 for example, and what happened? Total is 3, total is 8, total is 15, total is 17. What is happening? It is giving me total, but every time incremental, right? What should I do to finally just print in a right way? This should be outside the loop. Let me say control X, loop is over here, control V, control S. Let me go again. I need to compile again, right? Then yeah, right. assume that instead of passing the integer value, I would have a requirement to pass the floating point values. Then what the changes that I will need to make in this program? Only I will have to use the wrapper class float dot parse float, right? Okay. Now, the next topic that we are going to study is about where argument. Now, as the name indicates, where argument, that means variable number of arguments. That means in certain cases, for example, let me say I want to add integers, right? So one way was I could have said integer, let me say public integer add integer x comma integer y, and I will say return x plus y. Now if I need to add 3 variables, I will choose to overload this particular method. That's the way we would have done in normal condition. So integer z, and I will say integer x plus y plus z, right? This is called as overloading, right? The name of the method remains same. The return type doesn't matter here. The argument list changes either by the type or by the number. Okay? But in case we don't know how many elements we would like to add, just like in the case of command line argument. So in that case, I'm not sure how many such methods I need to write. So Java provides me a very easy way for doing that, and what it says is, instead of doing this, just put a 3 dot and then say x, right? And then what should I do? If I say int dot x, that means I can call this method by passing any number of arguments. That means I can call add, and I can pass single element, say 2, or I can say add, I can pass 2 comma 3. I can say add, I can pass 2 comma 3 comma 4, add 2 comma 3 comma 4 comma 5, so on, right? So any number of arguments as I wish I could pass if I have written a program using a var arg. So this is the indication. You write the type, you give three dot symbols, ellipse, and then you say the name of the variables. Now, actually internally what happens is, this x is nothing but it's a variable which is an array, just like we had in the case of command line argument. So it's an array, right? So you can imagine that this is something like, you say, for example, x, right? It will not work the same way, right? So internally it is always converted to an array, and if it is converted to array, what you can do is, you can always iterate using advanced for loop for integer I colon x, right? And then you can say, let me again say, integer sum is equal to 0 initially, fine. Then under this loop I will say sum is equal to sum plus I, right? And then finally I will try to return sum. ठीक है? Source format ठीक है. Now I will create another class test demo varchar, new class test demo var with a main method inside that, and then I will create a instance of demo varchar varg is equal to new demo varchar. ठीक है. Now system varg dot add method, right? I can pass 1. Let me copy this again. I can pass 1 comma 2. Let me copy again the same thing, control C. I can pass 1 comma 2 comma 3. फाइन. ठीक है. मेथड में क्या था? मेथड में ये था डेमोवर्कल मेथड, and it just says 3 dot symbols and then x, right? And this internally translates to an array of the type integer. So whether I pass one element or even a 0 element or 2 element or 3 element or 4 element or any number of element that is being assigned to this particular array, which I am iterating over, and because this array is of the type integer, right? So each element will be of the type integer referred by this I, and then in the sum I am just adding up I, that means each and every element, and then finally I am returning sum, right? In this test demo variable, what I am doing is I am just calling the method and printing the return value. ठीक है. Fine, clear? So that means what? You will see certain syntax in this command line program which possibly would say something like this, right? And this should also work. Let's try. I compiled, okay. Fine. ठीक है. So both the syntax are interchangeable. ठीक है. Now there are certain rules for using the var argument. The first rule is you must use the variable argument as the last parameter of the method. That means you cannot say integer y. It will give me a compilation error. The variable argument type of int in this method add must be the last parameter. ठीक है. Can someone guess me the reason? One rule that I have told you is that the var should be the last parameter. I cannot add any parameter after that. If I say something like this, integer y, that is okay. That will not give me compilation error. Okay, the var should be the last parameter of the method declared. It cannot be in between or the first parameter. The reason?
I think the reason may be of memory allocation, because in the first place the size of that variable argument is not known, so the compiler will not be able to give a location to that other variable which is coming after that variable.
What he says is very close. Assume from the point of view of the JVM, how it will work. If you pass 3 variables from the client code for a method, it will start assigning the first variable to the first parameter, the second variable to the second parameter, and third variable to the third parameter. So only the leftover will be assigned directly to the array, whether it be 1, 2, or 3, how many the arguments possibly be there, right? So you don't know in advance. If I put it before the maybe all the variables, if they are of the same type, they will be assigned to the array. How will that work? That doesn't justify it, right? So just from that reasoning point of view, you can assume that this rule is pretty much for that purpose. Okay.
Because the rest of the after the first argument, whatever it is, rest will be occupied by this.
Occupied by that will be put into this variable argument array, because it's an array, right? Another thing that I could not do is I cannot say something like again for the same reason, because it will not know the limit of the array y and the limit of array x, how to divide the elements in between, right? So I can have n number of elements of n types, but the var arg parameter must be at the last. So I can say int y float z, for example, is perfectly fine till the point this x is at the last point. ठीक है, clear है भाई? अच्छा, now tell me one thing. Let me just put this into the comment so that this code doesn't goes. Add block comment. If I write a method like this, public int add int x, oh, I don't need this, let me say just void, and then I am printing this x over here. Okay, this is one method, right? I am trying to overload this method. Public void add integer x comma integer dot 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 y. क्या वो कुछ गलत किया मैंने? एक शायद मेरे ख्याल से नहीं, अच्छा वो तो ठीक है, तो कर देता हूँ मैं, ये ऑटोमेटिकली जनरेट हो जाता है, ठीक है। x and suppose that I will iterate over here and print y, ठीक है। So does everything looks okay? I'm not getting a compilation error. So far so good, right? Let me go to the test demo where let me comment these 3 lines. In fact, these 2 lines. Source add block comment. Now 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, for example, right? I think Control S. ठीक है? So why I am getting error over here? Print boolean is the type of print stream is not applicable as a word. Okay, it's not returning anything, right? ठीक है, मैं ऐसे कर देता हूँ, ठीक है? Now int x int y. What is happening?
taking argument
You're taking one.
first
The
going
first argument.
ahead and
It's taking the first one. Why? Although I passed so many,
the var argument method should also be declared first. I'm not sure.
where are we always declared last.
No, method in which we have used var argument.
Okay, let's try this.
Just same name.
Let's try. Even I don't know what will happen. Just let's see. So what you can see is the JVM is pretty much confused. Which one it should use? Ideally, we can understand, okay, because it has a number of different argument, so it should pick up this one, right? But still there is a problem. Okay, Control S. Let me just remove this. It's not printing anything. That means it's going to which method? Tell me.
The first one.
The first one, because here we have left this one. Okay. So if there is ambiguity, right? If there is ambiguity, there are chances that you are going to do the mistakes. So while adding the where out, try to be cautious that you do not write any ambiguous code. It may have two meanings, right? Even if I just pass one variable, for example, in this case, there we will, because we are human, we are able to decide upon something, but basically the JVM is running on certain rules, right? Now, this condition is pretty much obvious, which is going to be confusing situation, right? One argument, which particular method to be called?
Normally, the second will be called.
Second one should be called, but I believe it will go with the, okay, yeah. ठीक है, ठीक है. So try to avoid such ambiguous code. Okay. Now let's move to the final. So the keyword final, as the name indicates, is used to declare a class, a method, and a variable as final. Okay. So that means we can use final in the context of class, we can use in the context of method, we can use in the context of variable. That means we can use final before class declaration, before method declaration, and before the variable declaration. All three will make sense. Okay. Now let's try to understand what does final makes sense in the context of each of these separately, right? So let's try to create a new class. Final demo. Final int, let be public, final int x is equal to 8. ठीक है. When I say a variable is declared as final, that means that is final and it cannot be changed. A variable being final means that its value once assigned could not be altered, right, or could not be changed. So that means if after writing this statement which has final in the declaration, if I want to say x is equal to, for example, 9, so that is going to give me a compilation error. Okay, this error is not about compilation, this just cannot make a static reference to the non-static field x. So either I can create the object of final demo and then I could assign, or simply let me say that this particular variable itself is a static variable, then that will solve my problem, right? Now if you see, the compilation error will actually change. The final field final demos x cannot be assigned. Okay. For example, in the math class, if you would have seen that the variable value pi and the variable value exponential e, those had a defined value and they were set final along with the static. Why they were final is because those are the standard values and you can assume that they are not going to change in the lifetime of the application forever. So if by mistake someone assigns a new value in some part of the application, that will introduce a bug. So I am pretty much sure that this particular variable is not going to change. The value what it holds is not going to change. So rather I would not prefer to call it a variable. I will prefer to call it a constant, right? So I will make it final, and then you cannot assign a new value to it once a value has been assigned to it. Okay. Now even though a value is not assigned initially,
Final variable has to be initialized at the time of declaration.
at the time of declaration, and any spelling mistake or what? Constructor है ना भाई? Okay, x is equal to 9. Even here also it's not taking. So all we can do is I can assign it here and then leave it as it is. Okay. Now there is a pretty much convention that you will see in declaring the final variable, whether the final variables are declared in a class or whether the final variables are the part of an interface. You know that every variable which is declared in the interface is automatically public, static and final. Every variable which is defined in a interface is public automatically. It is public, it is static, it is final, even though you do not put all these keywords before the name of the final. And the one convention that you will see that is very much obvious in the declaration of the final variables is that, for example, in this class math, you see this pi is what? It's a constant, it's a static, it's final, and then it's written in caps, right? Again here it is written in caps. So if I want to use it, for example, I would just simply say math dot say pi, right? In any part of the computation, for example, if I want to use it, I'll just say something like this, right? So just by looking at this particular convention, you will be able to realize that this particular variable pi is a final variable which is a constant. Okay. If there are more than one words, then those words will be separated by
Underscore.
underscore.
So why they have caps in caps?
क्या जी?
Caps में क्यों है?
वही तो कह रहे हैं, नॉर्मल वेरिएबल का जो कन्वेंशन होता है, द कन्वेंशन फॉर वेरिएबल इज कैमल केस. यस, टू डिफरेंशिएट इट they have, because this is the final thing, and even you don't need to see the code. Just by seeing the convention you will know that okay, this particular variable is a final variable. ठीक है, दिस इज अ कांस्टेंट रादर, आई मस्ट से इट्स अ कांस्टेंट, ठीक है।
तो मैं
इसको रहने देते हैं, काम करते हैं। Now let's create another class. Say for example, new class. Okay, one more thing I forgot to tell you in the context of the reference variable itself. See, this reference variable that we have talked about is of the type primitive, right? What if this reference variable is, instead of primitive, it is say a string which is a class, or employee which is a class, right? So what is this going to mean basically? Or let me talk about any of the class which is rather okay. Uh, Say a point class. It has got getter setter methods, right? There is a point class, it has got getter setter methods, right? So if I say it's point p, this has not been initialized. How to initialize it? Tell me. New point, ठीक है? Uh, does it have any parameterized constructor? Point class. Two arg, right? ठीक है. So let's just pass 2, 3 for example. ठीक है. Now what does this particular, declaring this point variable p as final means? It has been assigned to 2 and 3. So just like in the case of integer, we were not able to change the value. What does this will possibly mean in the case when it's a reference variable of the type point? It's all about the value that it holds, right? And the value that it holds is what? Are the two coordinates, right? So does this mean that I cannot say p dot set x to a new point 5, for example? We can do that, right? We're just calling a method on the point x, right? Say for example, if I say I have already provided a overridden version of the toString method in the point class, right? So let me say system.out.println and let me say p, and then let me copy this statement again and write it after we set x to a new value, right? And then we try to run the code. What is happening? Earlier for 2 3 and then it changed to 5 3. So when you're talking in the case of the primitive variable, the variable value, it's about the variable value. When I say the variable becomes constant, that means the variable value is constant that cannot be changed. But when we talk about a reference variable which is declared final, it's not about the state or the values that it holds, rather about the reference variable. The content that the reference variable holds, that becomes a constant. And what is this reference variable P holds actually? It holds the address. It holds the address, something like address, which is telling you how to reach to this object, which is 0.2, 3, right? So this means I can always go on and change the state variable. I can work on those variables. The value doesn't matter here. Rather, what I can not do is I cannot say P is equal to new point, say 5, 6. Now this will give me a comparison error. जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम। नहीं मैं क्लासरूम में हूँ मैं भी। नहीं छुट्टी नहीं है। हाँ वो तो हो गया। अच्छा वो रोशन दिया नहीं ना, चलिए मैं उनको बोल दूंगा, जाए भी दे देंगे आपको। अच्छा जी, हाँ वो बता रहा था, मुझे बता रहा था। बात हुई थी उससे। मैं क्लास के बाद आपको कॉल करूँगी तो भाई ठीक है, मैं आपको दोपहर थोड़ा देर में करता हूँ, 1 घंटे में। ठीक है। So basically now declaring a reference variable as final means that I cannot change the content that it holds, which is the address sort of thing, right? And it again means that I cannot assign a new object to it. Now this is going to give me a problem. The final field final demo.p cannot be assigned over here. So you get the difference clearly, right? ठीक है? हाँ बोलो, फिर से बताओ। See, the simple thing is that when I talk in terms of a primitive, say integer x, in that case the what thing becomes constant is the actual value of the variable, right? Here when it is a reference variable of the point class, then actually the value that it holds are defined in the terms of the state variables, and you can always keep on reassigning the values of those state variables. That doesn't matter here. Actually what it means is that this p reference variable is constant in the terms of what value it actually holds, not the real object. The real object is living somewhere in the heap, right? This reference variable is a variable which is just having an address that point to the particular object which is in the heap, right? So you cannot change this reference variable content, that becomes final. That means you cannot assign it a new address. This is what I am doing here, right? I am creating a new object, it will get a new address, and that address I am trying to assign it to the reference variable p. This is what I am not supposed to do. ठीक है, क्लियर हो गया? Now the final thing that we need to see is what it means in the context of a method and what it means in the context of a class. Yeah. So let me just remove it. Let me say a new class I am creating. See, the name of the class is, for example, A, just A, right? Nothing else. And I am creating a particular method in it, public void, say test method, and it does something. Say for example it says test. ठीक है, that's it. Now I want to create a new class, say class B, new class B, and I want to, by default you see the class B is extended from the object class. So I want to extend it from the class A. Okay. So I will get the skeleton already created. Now it has got a method, test method, which does something. I want to override the behavior of this test method. I will come here, I will print something else, for example test in B class. Okay, the method has changed, right? The behavior has changed. So far so good, no problem, right? But once I declare this particular method as public final test method in the A class, that is the parent class, the child class start giving me an error, and the error says, you see, cannot override the final method from A. Whenever I declare anything as final, that means it cannot be changed, and overriding basically means I am changing the behavior, right? Just like in the case of a variable, I was changing the value of the variable. Similarly, if I am trying to override a particular method which has been declared as final, that means I am attempting to change the behavior of the method. And declaring a method final means that behavior is become final and that cannot be changed. So if you have declared a particular method as final in the parent class, you cannot override that particular method. I will have to just satisfy with the version of the method which I am getting from the parent class. This class B is getting one version of the method of test method from the class A, right? ठीक है ना, क्लियर है? जैसे ही आप उसको ओवरराइट करने की कोशिश करेंगे वो कंपाइलेशन में ही एरर देगा आपको, ठीक है? Now if I declare a class as final, public class final, control S. Now you see again this child class start getting an error, but it's not about the method here. I can always choose to override the method which is a non-final method. For example, let me say control C and then I am pasting this particular method, control V, test in B for example. Okay. The error has shifted to the class. The type B cannot subclass final class A. Okay. That means I have declared the class A as final, so that becomes a class which should not be changed, that cannot be changed. And extension means what? If I am extending a class, that means I am adding some behavior to it, right? Point and point 3D class. Point class had got 2 dimensions. Point 3D class added one more dimension, that is Z, right? Okay. So that means the subclass extends the definition of the parent class. While extension, that will add something to it, that means it's going to actually change the definition of the parent class, right? In some way. Okay. So that when I say whether a variable is a final or a method is a final or a class is a final, that means that particular thing cannot be changed in any way, right? So declaring a class as final means that class cannot be changed, and that again means that cannot be extended. You cannot subclass. ठीक है, क्लियर हो गया? You will see the compilation error. ठीक है, तो अभी इतने पे रुकते हैं, ठीक है?
Sir, usually it should not be recommended to use final.
Sometime it is necessary, sometime usually it is not recommended because you are restricting something.
Inheritance and polymorphism.
You are just depriving the developer from those functionality, but string class is
It's specifically it was
that's final. There is a reason for it. अगली क्लास में डिस्कस कर लेंगे. In fact, there are many reasons for it. The most common one is it is related to the constant pool. ठीक है, तो अगली क्लास में थोड़ा सा डिस्कस कर लेंगे, उसको याद दिला देना, ठीक है?